Good morning, Bimblers. And you join me at the banks of the Bridgewater Canal again. It's becoming a bit of a habit, isn't it? In fact, we're right near the Preston Brook tunnel where we were a few Bimbles ago. But we're not going to Runcorn today. We're going to try and go to Frodsham. So let's stop messing about and let's bimble.
Easiest to make. Aim for the stars, it's yours, just wait. You do your best along the way. But it's those arms that told me I don't care if it's yours or mine. Without you it's just a waste of time. You showed me from the start such inspirations need a heart to bring you round. Big aspirations need a heart to hold you down. Though some get lost along the way, as sure as night designed the day, as long as I'm allowed to say, it's my heart that told me I don't care, you just disagree. Without you it wasn't meant to be. You showed me from the start such inspirations need a heart to bring you round. It could be ours. Big aspirations need a heart to hold you I don't care, you can say what you like. I'm a peace-loving person, but I know I'm right. It's as easy as right from wrong. I'm a lover, not a fighter, so I wrote this song. You showed me from the start such inspirations need a heart to bring you round. It could be ours. Big aspirations need a heart to hold you down. From the start such inspirations need a heart to bring you round. It could be ours. Big aspirations need a heart to hold you down.
Usually when I'm stood in front of a church in one of my videos, I start going on about Edward Graham Paley. I mean, he's my favourite. He's built and renovated so many churches in the northwest. It seems like everywhere I go, he's had something to do with it. But although he's my favourite ecclesiastical architect, he doesn't actually build or renovate my favourite type of churches. My personal favourite type of church is like this behind me, the Georgian style. Not your stereotypical church, not your Gothic revival with all the pointy bits. It looks more like a town hall or a municipal building. One of my favourites is the old John the Baptist church over in Pilling. We've bimbled there in the past. But I also like this one behind me, St Peter's Church in Aston, near Frodsham. It was built between 1697 and 1740, and it was all paid for by a Sir Willoughby Aston. The Aston family actually had an estate just behind the church, and they obviously have a lot to do with the church and the surrounding area. Various members of the Aston family are buried in the churchyard here at St Peter's Church, and one of the graves that I'm very interested in is a grave for Chloe Gambier. Gambier isn't actually her original surname. In fact, she probably didn't have one. She was born in 1760 in Gambia in Africa, and at 7 years old she was captured and brought over to the UK, to the port of Liverpool, to be sold as a slave. And it was the Aston family that bought her. It's not too clear why they bought Chloe. I mean, she was only 7 years old, so she wasn't much use around the house. And the Aston family actually had children around that age at the time. So a lot of people think they bought her as a playmate for the children, or as a kind of pet. Even more degrading when you think about it. She was immediately baptised here at St. Peter's Church. Again, a little bit confusing for a slave. Why would you have your slave baptised? She stayed with the Aston family for 70 years, and she eventually became their housekeeper, which murkies the waters even further. She died in 1838 of breast cancer, and she was buried here in St. Peter's Church, next to the Aston family. I suppose we'll never know the full ins and outs. Was she a family member, a member of staff, or a piece of property? She was definitely two of those. Let's bimble.
Maybe it didn't work at the time, maybe it never did. A mistake that made the distance, or a trying way to live. Maybe it's the time that you grabbed at my arms and electricity flowed from my shoulders to palms in a white hot glow, leaving white cold scars left bare and unshown just to prove they were ours. Maybe it worked, maybe it never did, maybe it never was quite like how it is.
One of the main reasons we came to Frodsham today was to see the Daniel Adamson, you know, the steamboat. He usually lives by the swing bridge here in Frodsham, but he's not in. He's gone out. I don't know where he's gone. Probably adventuring like we are. But you know what this means, Bimblers? My Frodsham Bimble becomes Frodsham 1, because we're going to have to come back and do Frodsham 2. where I can give you all my spiel about the Daniel Adamson. So that's good news, isn't it? But it left me at a bit of a loose end. What can I explore and go and see? So I decided to explore in between the Weaver Navigation and the River Weaver. There was no such thing as the Weaver Navigation up until 1720. That's when an Act of Parliament said you can do whatever you want with the River Weaver, as long as it makes it quicker to get salt out of Northwich and crockery out of Stoke-on-Trent. If you've watched my Northwich 2 Bimble, or you've been down National Cycle Route number 5, you'll know all about the River Weaver and the Weaver Navigation. They split apart from each other, and the Weaver Navigation goes through a series of locks, and then it'll come back together, the River Weaver and the Weaver Navigation, and then split apart again and go through another load of locks. In fact, this path that we've been exploring would have led down to the last lock on the Weaver Navigation, the one that would have brought it out into the River Mersey, up until 1894. That's when they built the Manchester Ship Canal, and from then on out, the Weaver Navigation and the River Weaver would have flowed into the Manchester Ship Canal, and the waters of the River Weaver wouldn't have met with the River Mersey again until you get to Eastham on the Wirral, right by the National Waterways Museum. I wonder if that's where the Daniel Adamson is today. I think my ticket's run out now. There's lots of exciting things down this road. There's lots of nice artwork underneath the motorway viaduct. Some very talented people around Frodsham and the surrounding areas. It brings a nice bit of colour to some grey concrete. And they've also got an old Bailey Bridge. What's a Bailey Bridge? The Bailey Bridge was the idea of Donald Bailey during the Second World War. He worked for the War Office as a civil servant, and they needed a quick way to build bridges where they bombed out the existing bridge. So Donald Bailey came up with the idea for the Bailey Bridge, a prefabricated bridge that could be erected on site. The Bailey Bridge here in Frodsham used to go over the Weaver Navigation and meet on with something called Chumley Road. That's where Runcorn Rowing Club is. And Chumley Road is called Chumley Road because the Chumley family used to live in a house at the top of Chumley Road, something called Rock Savage. And Rock Savage was built by the Savage family. And a man called John Savage came to a fiery end at something called Frodsham Castle, just over there. That's Bimble.
Maybe it never was quite like how it is. Maybe it's the time that I wanted to say that my limbs won't move more than 2 feet away from your day glow side luminescent sparks. I could burst into flames from one beat from your heart. Maybe it worked, maybe it never did, maybe it never was quite like how it is. Maybe it worked, maybe it never did, maybe it never was quite like how it is. And I quite like how it is.
Frodsham was listed in the Domesday Book of 1086 as Frodsham, and people believe that the name Frodsham comes from 2 words. Ford, meaning a shallow part of a river where you could get to the other side, and ham, meaning hamlet, so town or settlement. Other people believe that it was a man named Frote and his hamlet, town or settlement. It was actually quite an important place way back when. The Romans loved it. That was because it was near to Cheshire, where they liked hanging out, and near to the River Mersey, so they could get out to sea, and near to the salt of Cheshire. The Romans loved salt. I've told you in my Northwich Bimble that the Roman soldiers used to get paid in salt. And that's where we get the word salary from. And we also get the turn of phrase, worth his salt. Frodsham was quite a bustling port at one time. And if you think about it, it still is today. With the proximity of all the chemical works and Rock Savage Power Station, more on Rock Savage in a minute, and Stanlow Oil Refinery, there's ocean-going vessels coming in and out of Frodsham every day. Would you believe that Frodsham had a castle? And that's why the park we're stood in now is called Castle Park, because this used to be the grounds of the castle. It was built in 1070 by a Hugh Lupus. He was the Lord of Chester. And in the 1600s, it was sold to Sir Thomas Savage. Sir Thomas Savage lived at Rock Savage, over the Bailey Bridge on the Weaver Navigation down Chumley Road. Sir Thomas Savage died in 1635, and Frodsham Castle and Rock Savage Hall were passed down to his son, Sir John Savage, because obviously he needed Frodsham Castle and Rock Savage Hall, which was the second biggest home in Cheshire at the time, only superseded by Chumley Hall, owned by the Chumley family. They'll come into the story a little bit later. In 1617, James I visited Rock Savage Hall and had his tea there and stayed the night. These Savage lads weren't that savage at all, right poshos, and royalists to boot. In 1654, because they were royalists, Oliver Cromwell went and knackered Rock Savage Hall, and while it was being fixed, Sir John Savage came and stopped at Frodsham Castle, where he died. And while he was lying in state in Frodsham Castle burnt down. I'm not sure whether that was Oliver Cromwell or not, but Sir John Savage was cremated in his castle here at Frodsham. In the 1700s, Rock Savage Hall was bought by the Chumley family of Chumley Hall in Cheshire. They had the largest home in Cheshire. Rock Savage Hall was just the second largest in Cheshire. And by 1782, it was in ruins. And that's how it is today. We'd have had a Bimble there, but it's in the middle of someone's field and we're not allowed in, so you can't really see anything of it. Also in the 1700s, the land that was Frodsham Castle was bought by a local lawyer, a Robert Wainwright Ashley, and he built himself Castle Park Hall and the lovely gardens that surround it, so he could walk round it and count his money, I guess. It was sold to lots of other rich lads and a few posh chaps, and eventually it was donated to Runcorn Council in the 1930s so that we could come here on a Saturday and have a Mr. Whippy ice cream and walk the dog.